Tudor.
So is that imagined community in India, has that been shifting?
Absolutely. That is the key way in which democracy is breaking down in
Mm,
India. There's been a rise of a political party that is actually, and people who don't know India may not necessarily know this, that the the BJP, which is ruled over right now by Narendra Modi, who's the current
mm,
prime minister, the BJP was actually, as a political party, was set up by a social movement called the RSS, the
okay.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. And the RSS, as a social movement, is a movement whose core animus, whose core goal is the creation of a Hindu nation.
Hmm.
And it openly celebrates, actually, in the readings and the writings of Hitler. This is speaking of the what would Gandhi make of India today? It was a member of the RSS that was responsible for
Right.
assassinating Gandhi.
Okay.
And this is the movement that has set up the political party that is now in power. And the movement has celebrated a Hindu definition of Indianness, and it has instantiated that in changing textbooks, in changing symbols. And in many ways, it's not that elections are disappearing, but it's that all the civil liberties, especially of minority groups, are shrinking. And the right
Hmm.
to criticize the government or to speak up on behalf of groups or who are having their rights deprived is also shrinking, because if you do, you will be called an anti-national.
Mm,
So this is all to say that the core of India's democratic decline today, which every major watchdog of democracy has downgraded India's democracy in some fashion to something like, in some cases it's an electoral democracy, but in any case, it's no longer a full and robust democracy by any independent watchdog. And that is because of the rise of kind of Hindu nationalism that has politically enabled the targeting of
yeah.
first minorities and following on from that, groups that speak up on behalf of any marginalized groups.
And it starts with this imagined community of them now imagining India as this sort of Hindu state, essentially.
Yes, I mean, and it's a certain reading of history. So, this
Yeah.
is a nice link to our conversation earlier about the importance of history. The core belief of the RSS and movement, which is really the kind of core behind the BJP, the core movement behind the BJP, is that it's very similar to the Chinese story that there's been a century of humiliation
Mm,
that has held China back, and that the West is holding China back. And the Indian version of that story is that there have been kind of 900 years of various groups coming in to India, invading India and
yeah.
holding it back. And that has
Yeah.
been because Hinduism has been soft or weak at
Ah,
resisting it.
yeah.
And so the solution to this is to recreate India as a muscularly Hindu state
Yeah.
that is reacting to this perception of weakness, or
Yeah.
the idea that India has been weak for so long. And so it is that reading of history that suggests the solution of the rise of Hindutva, or Hindu nationalism.
Yeah.
And the mainstreaming of that in politics has taken the form of systematically hobbling what we earlier talked about were the legs of democracy. So though elections are still held, the
Yeah.
possibility of actual electoral defeat is is improbable. And that's because if you imagine like a chessboard that's flat, and that, you have major political parties competing against each other,
Hmm.
that chessboard is no longer flat. It's sort of systematically tilting with the kind of powers of those individual pieces kind of accumulating around the key piece, or in this case, that's the chief executive. And so
Yeah.
the possibility of actually a fair debate and discussion and a fair election is increasingly, it's increasingly less likely.